Thank you so much for joining today. We're talking about the Clean Energy Career Pathway NOFO. Just for a quick little idea of our agenda, we're going to talk about the program, talk about the actual application process, talk about the technical assistance. Today is your big portion of technical assistance because you're going to hear the program piece and the financial piece, but we are going to incorporate some office hours. So as you take this information back and start working on your application, you may have questions that come up. So we're going to show you some opportunities to jump on for some office hours and get more individual attention on that as well. So to start, I just want to give you a little background of this Notice of Funding opportunity. The purpose is to provide funding to eligible entities to support planning a clean energy pathway and then support the implementation of that pathway. This will include aligning curriculum and work-based learning opportunities. This funding opportunity is seeking eligible entities that will work with their local workforce innovation areas. And if you're not really familiar about the local workforce innovation areas, that is something that we would be able to assist you with as you're working on that application. And you would also need to work with employers. This pathway should include technical and employability skills with dual credit options for the learners. So to make sure that you are an eligible entity for this Notice of Funding application, Notice of Funding opportunity, and doing the application, you would need to be defined as one of the following: ROE, which is Regional Office of Education, an Intermediate Service Center, state institutions of higher ed, laboratory schools, public university laboratory schools approved by ISB, vocational centers, charter schools, co-ops, schools operated by an ROE or ISC, and any type of school district could also apply. But the key is it's in the yellow box at the top. Eligible applicants must partner with a community college, a local workforce innovation area, and an employer for this funding opportunity. The target population is going to be in-school youth with one or more barriers to employment. In-school youth for this specific opportunity is going to be defined as youth aged 14 to 21 currently attending secondary school, that's including alternative schools, and has not yet received their high school diploma or equivalent. The barriers for this opportunity would be classified as youth that are classified as low income. So those are that would be your target population. The next is the timeline. The grant is going to be a 2-year grant. However, the first year can be a planning period because part of the grant, and you'll see as this goes on, is going to be incorporating some curriculum, modernizing your classroom, providing professional development. So you could have the first year as a planning period. The second year, then you would be required to pilot the actual career pathway program. Planning periods also, if you're thinking about this and maybe you wouldn't need as much, that you wouldn't need that full year, planning periods could be less than a year. We could work with you to get that implementation and see if you're ready, and then you could just start implementing. Program requirements. This grant requires career pathway alignment. The link to the Career Pathways Dictionary provides common language and definitions. Also, programs of study are important for this program. Expanding opportunities and obtaining credentials is a must. There is more information, additional information in the Notice of Funding opportunity. For instance, here I have the link to the Career Pathways Dictionary. That is something that is also linked in the Notice of Funding opportunity that you can click on. And we're actually going to talk about it a little bit later down on these slides too, but just to start thinking about if you needed some additional information, they're also listed in the NOFO. Curriculum alignment. So we do have right here on the slide, on the right-hand side here, the Clean Jobs Curriculum Framework. This is something that our CG team already uses, and there's components. If you can see the components, it's kind of, oops, sorry about that. If you can see the components there, it has the pre-assessments, the personal effective skills, the workplace skills, the clean energy basics, and then the transitions into eventually the job services. So it gives you, and again, this is right in the NOFO, so you can look at it and see more information on it, but it's going to give you that framework. You can use that framework, or you can kind of create your own, but in doing so, you would need to incorporate the left-hand side elements into your curriculum alignment. So again, you'll be able to see the details. I put a picture really quickly there on the slide, but you'll be able to look through that and see kind of which route you want to go. But the bottom line is you would have to have curriculum alignment. This is the Career Pathway Dictionary I was just talking about. So the link is provided in the opportunity and here. These are the partners that have worked on this dictionary. So you can see I am from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So our department was, our agency was involved in helping create this dictionary. And as you can see, the Board of Higher Ed, the State Board of Education, Student Assistance Commission, Department of Employment, Employment Security, and the Community College Board, just to name a few that have also been in partnership to create this dictionary. This is kind of the second edition. The first one it didn't quite look like this, but after a period of time, we got back together and realigned it and updated some definitions. But if you've never seen this before, it's a very good site. You can go to it. It's really good for common language, definitions, and then seeing like sometimes there's might even be examples of things. So again, that is posted right in the notice of funding opportunity. Same with program of study. There's more information in the opportunity, but you would need a coordinated sequence of academic and technical content from secondary to post-secondary. So you see that alignment. In that program of study, there can be multiple entry and exit points, but it has to also incorporate a credential in there. The implementation, this NOFO aims to increase career opportunities for in-school youth in the clean energy sector. So when you're implementing your program, make sure your strategies are flexible. While writing your application, consider equity, outreach, engagement, planning, assessment, strategies, services, placement, and follow-up. These again are all listed in the notice of funding opportunity. So you'll be able to get more information on that. But just as today, when you're thinking about maybe if you haven't started writing it yet and you're just thinking about what things I might need to incorporate, or if you're brainstorming with colleagues, these are things you need to consider for your overall implementation of the program. Performance goals and measures. So for any of our grants, we require reporting. So we would help you with your implementation plan and to determine what your goals will be. And for an example of this would be the number of youth that you're enrolling in the program, the number of youth that actually complete your program, the number that obtain credentials. So as you can see, those are some of the things that we would ask you to report on. In addition, there would be other things that we'd want to keep track of, like number of businesses engaged, number of youth placed in a pre-apprenticeship, things like that. So you'll see if you do become a grantee, we would actually go more into detail on the actual goals and measures, but just to be upfront, kind of getting an idea of some of the things that you would be responsible for. Priorities, program priorities, anybody that's an eligible entity can obviously apply for this funding opportunity, but we have a couple priorities that we're really looking at that could additionally score a little bit more in their application, because we are really trying to focus on this. And the first one is any entity focusing on EV. The second is entities serving rural students. And then the third one is partnering with any of the community college boards Rev Up EV Community College Grant. This was a great question that came up already. this is round one. So in the notice of funding opportunity, the entities that I put in there were the current grantees from the round one. So if you're a round two or familiar with a round two, and even in the future round three, those were not included in the notice of funding opportunity because of the timing of when the notice of funding opportunity was approved and going through the channels. But we would honor if you also wanted to partner with a round two or round three grantee in your application. So if you know that you're possibly going to be partnering with one that you don't see on this in the NOFO as listed, but you know they are, go ahead and write round two grantees in there, and we will honor that as a priority. The next is the funding information. The total amount for this award is going to be 5 million. So our awards would range approximately 100,000 to 500,000 per grantee. We anticipate possibly 10 to 15 awards. Well, we would have to see how many meet the criteria, but the planning period again could be less than a year if you're ready for implementation. So it's a 2-year award though. Application and submission. Make sure you're paying attention always in the application and submission portion so you don't miss the due date. Unfortunately, if it's even a minute late, our system won't count it as a eligible application. So we'd hate for you to miss out on that. So we always encourage applicants to please submit early. We do it through a smart sheet, and in case you have any problems or anything, you definitely want to try to submit that early just so you don't lose out on the opportunity. The due date is 5 p.m. on November 12th, but again, encourage you to try to get that in a little bit quicker. When you're looking at the notice of funding materials on our webpage, you'll see that there's different required documents that you'll need to submit. There's the program application, the uniform application, conflict of interest disclosure, and then the mandatory disclosure, the uniform budget, and the NOFO supplement. I'm going to go over that guided application, but just remember to include all your documents in that smart sheet before you submit. Okay, I want to go over the review information now. Like I said, I'll pull up the application in a minute, or in the PowerPoint later, you'll see the application. I kind of pulled it out, but I want to first go over the review criteria. This is listed right in the notice of funding opportunity as well, but we go off of 4 key components, which are capacity, need, program plan, and budget. So first one is capacity. If you can see, I pulled a little picture of what it looks like from the funding opportunity. This is the capacity portion that shows you the possible points. It tells you what you'll be scored on. And so then when you're creating your application, you'll know the possible points it takes to get that and what kind of things we're looking for. So we do this in a guided application, which again, we'll pull up in a minute, but really look at that rubric before you start writing your application so you can think about the overall process of this grant. This section of capacity, we're looking for basically an example of, or you will give us an example of how you've ran past grants, your grant history, things like that. Do you have the capacity internally to run a grant like this? Because obviously there's different parts of a grant that you would need, you need people to look at the budget, and you need people to deal with the program. And do you have all the possible pieces in place right now? Do you have the capacity? So they're going to be asking questions that has to do with that in the capacity section, just to make sure that you're ready to run a grant. Need is a little bit shorter section for need. This is where you'll identify why you need a clean energy pathway program in your area. This section also will ask about low income students, just to make sure that they're being prioritized and they'll want to anticipate about how many students in that low income that you would be serving. So that was the next section. That's going to give you 15 points for that one. The biggest section typically on our grants is the program plan. The program plan section is where you get to give the details of your program. This is kind of the fun stuff. You can tell us, in an elevator pitch, the overall, like what's happening with your program. You really get to do the details in this section. And then it'll also talk about, your curriculum. There's an actual curriculum worksheet in the application. So this is kind of where you'll do the meat and potatoes of the application. And then the last section, the smallest section, is the budget. The budget is high level narrative on what's happening in your program. In this section, applicants provide a high level budget narrative in addition to an Excel spreadsheet. And that's why my colleague Josh is on today. He'll be discussing the budget and any financial pieces after I finish here. And then in this section, in addition, you'll discuss a sustainability plan, because one thing that's important with our funding opportunities is this isn't just a one-off. This needs to be sustainable. So how are we going to continue to carry this on? That's the review criteria. And then just to reiterate, so you can see how the breakdown of the priority points, if you did have those priorities we talked about earlier, that could give you additional points. So you could have up to 9 additional points possibly. You could do 3, you could do 3, you could do 6, you could do 9, but that kind of gives you an idea of where that falls, because again, these are kind of by priorities of what we're looking for this opportunity. So now I wanted to quickly show you the application. Hopefully some of you have already kind of looked at it, but this is just a different, just wanted to pull it out just to make sure that you're understanding like where we're going with this. Like I said, it's a guided application. So the first part here is really important because it's the A through E. It's reminding you of things that you're going to need to make sure you have when you're submitting your application. And then at the bottom, the priority points, making sure you're selecting if you do have any or all or some of those priority points, you would go ahead and click those. Next is the just your applicant information about you, your legal name, your address, your contact. We ask for a primary contact and a secondary contact in case we need to reach you. And then this is also where you're going to select what type of how you're an eligible entity. So if you are partnering, well, you have to, but whatever school districts you're partnering with, or even if you're the school district, what is the school district? Who is it? What is the community college? What local workforce area number is it? What employer or employers? And that's where you say we'll submit that information. Next week, oops. Next, we will get into the first section that we just talked about, capacity. And in here, you'll see exactly what you'll do in that gray area. There's no limits on how much you are typing, and you should be able to, if you needed to copy and paste anything in, it should work. It's in a Word document, so it should be easier to navigate and copy and paste and things and not have limits. But you'll be able to write in there all the answers to these questions. So you can see the first 4 are just kind of like tell us, and they'll type it in there. The next one is the grant history chart. And this is where we like to see what prior grants you've had, and we just see what you've had before. Then we go into a couple more questions, and then the last one on this, you should see the staffing plan worksheet. That'll be the next thing. And this is kind of important because it's going to show, it's really going to show that capacity at a different level, because we all maybe think we have the capacity, but when you really start breaking down the duties of program administrator, outreach and recruitment, support services, and data, maybe you're like, oh gosh, do we have this all covered? Now, one person can do multiple things, obviously, but we just really want to make sure that you're thinking about the bigger picture in the grant management process to make sure that, you really do have that capacity to run this grant. And then it goes on and talks about the partner roles. Because we are requiring the partnerships, we want to make sure that you have partners and team leads for those partners at those entities. So who from the community college is your partner, which we would just call team lead or support staff if you have it. and who's going to be that contact. So we know that you really have the true team of the local workforce area, the employer, the community college, and the local education agency, school district, however it may be. Next is the need, a couple of questions, just 3 questions on need, but again, trying to get at if, why is this program important in your area? And then it'll go into that program plan where we talked about the elevator pitch, your recruitment strategies, curriculum tool, which is the next one that is actually broken out and giving you an idea of things that you need to start thinking about according to the curriculum and how that's going to look in your program. And then it breaks it down with the different competencies. And then it breaks it down again into the population served. These are what you're hoping for. I mean, it might not be an exact number. Obviously, total number served, you might have an idea, but we're just wanting you to put that in this so we have an idea of about the amount of customers, students in this case, you'll be serving, and then trying to break down what cost per student that is looking like when you look at work-based learning, when you look at direct training, when you look at supportive services or barrier reduction, just an estimate of when you start breaking all this down, maybe the cost per. So that's why we do that. And then we look at barrier reduction funding and supportive services. And again, you might not know exactly, but just an idea of what barrier reduction you might be doing, work-based learning type, your business partners again, and employers, and then just kind of a brief description of what your pathway is going to look like. If you become a grantee, we would go into more detail on all that, but just up front, just kind of really thinking about those things because they would be required into the real process of the grant. So just kind of a ballpark on some of this, but just knowing that we would get into more detail later. And then of course, the last section is the budget where we talked about you would do these questions here in addition to the Excel spreadsheet. And then the last part of the guided app is talking about the sustainability plan because we have, are requiring these partners for this grant, and then thinking about how can these partners continue as this grant ends or throughout the years, these same partners, how is this going to be sustainable? And then next is reporting. So one of our requirements for reporting is the PPR and the PFR, so performance reporting and financial reporting. This is something that happens quarterly. And then in addition to that, we have a reporting system in Illinois workNet where grantees also report on what's going on with their enrollments and services and things. So reporting is mandatory. We do go into more detail once grants are awarded. There'll be more technical assistance sessions on how to do this and stuff. So if you're not familiar with this, don't be worried because we really walk all of our grantees through this process.